And meanwhile, it's a $4 trillion stare down between two tech giants over app stores. Apple and Microsoft used to have a hot rivalry, and Microsoft Satya Nadella nodded to the competition at the company's Windows 11 reveal event last week.
Today, the world needs a more open platform, one that allows apps to become platforms in their own right.
Some have called this a reignition of that rivalry for a new era. Let's bring in Recode co-founder, CNBC contributor, podcast host extraordinaire, Kara Swisher. And Kara, I don't think that's really what this is in the sense that, I mean, Microsoft's really about Azure and enterprise productivity. Apple's about consumer premium vertically integrated platforms. And yes, app stores get in the mix there, but that's not going to cause some huge dust up between these two companies. Now, though it is convenient for Microsoft to position itself as the open platform. Who saw that coming?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I think you're wrong. I think they are in the consumer space and gaming and that area. And they've moved very heavily into lots of gaming that is in the cloud, right, rather than just console play. And so I think it's very important for them to feel like they have control. And I think this is going to be played out with a number of companies. Apple thinks that Microsoft's behind Epic, you know, because around Fortnite and the lawsuits. But the idea of who controls the platform is going to be an increasingly big question for companies as they try to battle it out. And Apple has a lot of advantage here in a lot of areas Microsoft's interested in, whether it's gaming, whether it's video or team building or things like that, the kind of things they sell. So I think they do have more of a rivalry than you might imagine, even though they're trillion-dollar companies now, like multi-trillion-dollar companies.
Yeah, I think they got a rivalry around the edges, but I think investors would be wise to keep their eye on the ball here. And for Microsoft, the ball is not the same thing that Apple is going for with the App Store. And for Apple, I mean, even if the App Store rules change, that's not the core of what drives their revenue and profits. It's one of their platforms, but they've got multiple. They've got the phone itself. They've got the retail stores. They've got so many things that Microsoft has backed away from. They're not in phones. They're not in retail. They've given up so many of those platforms. So I think they can both succeed. And while, you know, making it look like there's a competition is good for both, this isn't some kind of rekindling of the big OS rivalry of that bygone era.
No, I don't agree with you. I think it really is about who controls the access to consumers and businesses. And I think Apple has an enormous stranglehold. And even though it's not the biggest part of their business, it's certainly an Achilles heel for them. There's two Achilles heels they have, actually. One is China, and the other is this App Store situation. And I think a lot of regulators are interested in this area. And so, you know, Microsoft is pushing here because it can get an advantage here in the idea and become a, you know, Facebook tried to do this, but nobody likes Facebook, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. And so Microsoft is sort of everybody's pal. Here we are being everybody's pal. And if they do things like go back and look at TikTok or anything else, they're going to want to have some control over the platforms that they serve their customers on.
Kara, there's a reason nobody likes Facebook, though, right? It's had a lot more opportunity being so consumer facing. So, you know, I wonder, is this really worth it for Microsoft to wade into this fight? I mean, it's been able to pretty much escape the scrutiny of regulators, and now here it is wading into a fight with Apple and potentially Facebook on one of the most controversial issues right now of app stores and who gets to control the consumer.
Well, interestingly, it got out of some of the antitrust legislation because they're not in the mobile space in quite the same way. And some of the legislation is being tweaked that it aims at companies like Apple versus Microsoft. Because, you know, Microsoft could be pulled into some of these things and hasn't been. And I think that's due to the sort of the very deft diplomacy of Satya Nadella and especially Brad Smith. But at the same time, you know, it just hit, what, $2 trillion? It's a huge company, and it owns the spaces that they're in. And so I don't think they're going to completely escape scrutiny. And at the same time, there's nothing wrong with taking a little swipe at a bigger company to show competition happening.
Further risk?
Yeah.
It doesn't further risk that by wading into this fight?
I don't know what you would point to necessarily. I think it helps them. I think it helps them to do it. He wouldn't do it if he didn't have a reason to do it. And I think it helps them in some fashion.
Kara, I don't mean to, you know, ask a lazy question that reduces these companies to personalities, but I do wonder who you think has exceeded expectations more, Nadella or Cook?
Oh, Nadella, I think. Well, both, right? They're both done amazingly well. No one thought Cook could do anything after Steve Jobs, the great god of tech, Steve Jobs. And so I think he's done it. So, I mean, the numbers are what they are. But at the same time, Nadella had a lot to clean up there and changing the culture. And I think he really is quite focused. He's very humble. They're very similar in personality, if you want to put them, you know, two adults, very much calm, not given to crazy tweeting and things like that. And so they're a lot alike, but at the same, I don't know if I would. I don't know. That's a good question. I thought you were going to ask me why am I sitting in a closet, but that's okay. It's just for Pride Month. For Pride Month. It's fine.
Yeah.
Last time I visited the closet was right now, but go ahead.